Hello, holy people of God in the Episcopal Diocese of Iowa. I am Elizabeth Duff Popplewell, the Rector of St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Cedar Falls. I am honored and excited to be among those you are considering to be our next bishop. I have a deep love and affection for the people of our diocese. I came to Iowa in the early 80s to attend Drake University. At 18, I thought I would be here for 4 years and then move on. But one thing led to another, and it turns out that Iowa has been my home now for almost 40 years. It took some time for me to formally enter the search process. I am grateful to my friends and colleagues who encouraged and discerned with me this invitation to see what the Holy Spirit might be up to in a potential call to be your bishop. Through prayer and reflection, I have learned to pay attention to the Spirit's prompting, even when her nudgings might be leading places well beyond my imagination. I am excited to be part of this search process with the entire diocese. I believe I bring certain gifts to the episcopacy. I am a good listener and believe in collaborative ministry. I bring a broad spectrum of diocesan leadership experience, having served a number of terms on the standing committee, having been a member of the revival team, as well as a member of Faithful Innovations, and have been involved with numerous other diocesan efforts. I have a strong commitment to our youth and have enjoyed serving in a variety of capacities at Epic Summer Camp, Happening and New Beginnings, and of course, the beloved ski trip. My doctoral work in congregational development has provided me with incredible learning opportunities, including the chance to visit and study with communities who are proclaiming and living the gospel in innovative and creative and life-changing ways. I have skills in building healthy and sustainable mission-focused communities and have a keen interest in discipleship formation. I have a strong appreciation for ecumenical and interfaith work and am committed to further strengthening our partnerships with our companion dioceses. I am grateful for the time I was able to spend in Swaziland, now Eswatini, with Bishop Alina, and more recently in the Diocese of Nzara for the consecration of Bishop Richard. As a diocese, we are at an important and exciting crossroads. We have been engaged in the important work of discernment for the past few years, and we are ready to build on those learnings and experiences in order to proclaim the good news in creative and compelling ways. Again, my work throughout the diocese has provided keen insight into the life of many of our congregations. Personally, I have been a member of a large, a small, and medium congregation, which enables me to see the gifts as well as the struggle in a variety of contexts. I believe strongly in the ministry of all the baptized and am committed to furthering the work of discipleship and leadership development. I take great delight in listening to other people's stories. I'm a naturally very curious person, and my training as a journalist has taught me to pay attention to details, large and small. In sharing our stories, not only do we get to learn about a person's interests and dreams, we also gain incredible insight as to what makes them tick, namely what inspires them, what makes them afraid and holds them back, while also discovering the gifts and talents that they possess. Deep and curious listening is crucial to finding our identity and purpose, and hopefully prevents us from falling back into status quo thinking. As bishop, I see myself visiting congregations and spending a good amount of time in getting to know them through an intentional listening and study process. Although we are Iowans and we are Episcopalians, each congregation has a distinctive story. Each has a unique way of expressing and inhabiting the good news of Jesus Christ. My work with the Faithful Innovations team, although somewhat put on hold this past year, has taught me new skills in helping individuals and communities create tangible ways of listening to God and focusing on the work of the Holy Spirit. One of the things that I really appreciate about this work is the invitation to experiment. I think freeing ourselves from unrealistic expectations of perfection is crucial to our future growth. Test and learn or experience-based learning is a powerful foundation for discipleship and often doesn't require a great investment of financial resources, just a willingness to try something on and see what happens. Ironically, I think that as a diocese, we've actually grown more connected during this time of pandemic, despite having to stay secluded. Thanks to technology, in many cases that which was provided by the diocese a few years ago, we have seized the moment as an opportunity to worship together, share stories, brainstorm, and learn from one another. Understanding our collective struggles as well as successes allows us to move forward in compassion and respect for our differences, while also recognizing that we are united in our common purpose to make Christ known to the world. I see hope spreading across our diocese. There are so many expressions of divine love being poured out into our neighborhoods right now, from community gardens rooted on church grounds to food pantries and medical equipment lending closets offering assistance to the most vulnerable among us. From innovative and collaborative campus ministries and young people excited about their faith, to new congregations being welcomed into the diocese. It is exciting to see the varied ways Episcopalians are living out our baptismal covenant while also getting to know our neighbors. I also see hope in online Bible studies that allow people from different geographical settings to join the conversation. I see hope in Just Faith groups, in the efforts of our Faith and Action team and those engaged in prison ministry. I see hope manifested in congregations removing pews to install labyrinths and soft spaces which allow children to engage more actively in worship, and in the energy and commitment being given to dismantle racism and build affirming and welcoming communities. I see a river deep and wide of hope spreading across our diocese. I am grateful for our experiences a few years ago with the revivals and the subsequent years of growing Iowa leaders and engaging all disciples, which serve to reignite the creative fires of worship and witness, passions and purpose, action and conviction. At a time when people are saying that the church is dying, our diocese is taking the bold step of saying, "Not on our watch," as we bravely begin the work of midwifing new and creative expressions of being church. Living through the pandemic, we've learned a lot about ourselves. We learned that we are more resilient and agile than we once thought, as many of us pivoted to offer some form of online worship, and we found new ways of staying connected, not just to our members, but also to the people in our communities in which we live and work. As I mentioned earlier, we grew closer as a diocese through bi-weekly Zoom meetings with Bishop Allen and our fellow clergy and diocesan leadership. We heard tales of overcoming hardship, congregational successes, and future-focused ministries when we gathered for our all-chapter meetings and the May Day storytelling gathering. Moving forward, we will need to fight off the habit of operating in the mindset of scarcity and instead focus on the abundance that is already among us. As we enter back into our buildings, we must resist the urge to simply take up where we left off and instead pay heed to the lessons that we've learned along the way. What is essential? What do we keep? And what do we let go? Where and how is God calling us to become alongside our neighbors and to share God's love? As the song goes, what we need is here, here, here. In an ever-shifting social context, we must also learn to speak the language of our neighbors. For some, that may mean learning to speak Spanish or even Arabic, but it also may be learning the language of radical hospitality and respecting the dignity of every human being. Our biggest challenge is not to fear the change, but to welcome it as possibility and hope for the future. A few years ago, I had the privilege of accompanying a few of our congregation's high school students on a civil rights pilgrimage. We visited such sacred places as the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, and the Absalom Jones Center for Racial Healing in Atlanta. I began the preparation for this journey thinking that I had a good understanding of our country's history and what I assumed to be progress in affirming equality for all people. I was shaken and disturbed and even ashamed by what I did not know. Since that time, I have started to educate myself on the truthful reality of where we find ourselves as a nation, as a church, and as followers of Jesus. I have read books, listened to podcasts, participated in dismantling racism trainings, attended rallies and marches, and I remain committed to putting my learnings into practice. But raising our race consciousness is an ongoing, lifelong process. It requires an intentional mindset that includes realizing that racism is everyone's problem, and I am responsible for doing something about it. As a Christian, I am already called to speak out against injustices and to work for freedom from oppression and fear. As bishop, I want to learn with the people of our diocese and invite them into faithful conversations with people we can learn from. Alongside others, I hope to further our continued efforts to name the sins of complacency and privilege, to acknowledge the oppressive burdens of poverty, food deserts, inadequate education and housing offerings, and the prison pipeline, and to work to repair the breach that continues to divide us. To that end, I support reparations in the form of education grants and community development projects. But beyond financial responses, it will be essential that we continue to join in the work of reconciliation. I am grateful for the work being done on our behalf by the Beloved Community Initiative and the Faith in Action team, and I will work with them to further the fight for racial equality. It is well past time that we acknowledge the grave evil of racism and all other isms that infect our communities. We must mourn the lives lost and destroyed and the opportunities lost, while we celebrate the courage of the people who continue this important work, and we must take our place among them. As a ministry developer, it's a joy to watch how God's gifts come together when people realize that they are bearers of God's love, whether that's through their work, their community involvement, relationships with others, or even their hobbies. All of us play an important role of bringing joy, hope, and healing into our fractured world. I love seeing how people take an idea and begin to foster experiments to help it evolve into a life-giving and loving ministry. I am overwhelmed with joy and gratitude when people who have previously been excluded from a faith community feel that they can honestly trust the radical welcome we extend. I love seeing children bounce their ways up to their altar, excited to receive the body and blood of Christ, knowing that they are full members of God's family. And I take great delight in seeing the diverse ways that we as individuals and communities in the Episcopal Diocese of Iowa manifest God's love by recognizing everyone as a beloved child of God.